My comment is about the comparison between the Protestant doctrine of predestination, Calvinism, pure Calvinism, and the Baha'i approach to free will. And here is the thing. Every time I discuss with my students the doctrine of predestination, when I'm talking about Martin Luther and how he was going through his spiritual crisis, he doubted his own salvation, and how he was able to regain the certainty of his own salvation through his faith and through his reinterpretation of one sentence in one of the letters of the Apostle Paul, etc., etc. So when I'm talking to my students about free will, they usually assume that free will is about our ability to choose certain things from certain things. And most of them reject right at the outset Calvin's approach of predestination. And then I explain to them that free will can be of two kinds. The external ability to choose. Yes, I can lift my hand, or I can not lift my hand. I can talk, or I cannot not talk, etc. I can do certain things in the external world. And this free will is always limited by various things, by the level of our knowledge, for example, by the level of our technology, for example. At some point, we may be able to travel to Mars. But at this point, no matter how hard I want to do that, I won't be able to do it, etc. So this is free will versus necessity. The natural world is governed by laws, natural laws, and when we confront natural laws, we are facing the necessity of either conforming to those laws or somehow adapting to those laws and use those laws in order to advance. But there is another kind of freedom, and obviously when Calvin is talking about this freedom, when Jesus is talking about this freedom, that I will set you free. This is the inner freedom of human mind. We are free to choose what to study, what kind of knowledge we want to accumulate, what kind of skills we want to practice, what kind of beliefs we want to arrive at. And here comes Calvin's big question. Calvin does not doubt that humans have a free will. I think that is a common mistake. And the people thought of Calvin as being a determinist. No, Calvin does not question that humans have free will. However, what he rejects is human ability to have free will with regard to divine subjects. So our free will is limited by our human capabilities and the world we live in. However, whatever comes from God and the divine world, that, according to Calvin, is not subject to human will. We cannot choose to be born or not to be born. If we are born, that already happened outside our choice. And therefore, we cannot choose to be saved or not saved, because this is ultimately beyond the limit of our free will. So that is very important to understand. And, standing on that position, Calvin says that it's up to God to choose who is saved, who is damned, and we may accept it, we may reject it, but no matter how we approach this issue, it is simply beyond our capacity. So that I would call, and that's what Nicholas Berdyaev called the opposition between freedom and grace. And that is the difference. You know, freedom versus necessity is one thing, but freedom versus grace is another thing. I was struggling with this issue for actually many years. And slowly but surely, I finally came to an understanding that Baha'u'llah, in the beginning of the Most Holy Book, challenges this approach altogether. Because according to the verses, our first moral obligation is to accept the manifestation of God. And Abdul Baha tells us that in the area of morality, our will is completely free. It is not free from our upbringing. It is not free from our education. It is not free from the conditions in which we live. But all of this can be changed. But our personal moral will is free, and it is up to us whether to accept or to reject the manifestation of God. And I think this is the approach that is opposite to what Calvin was taking. Now, Baha'u'llah's approach is similar to the Catholic approach, because Catholics, in response to Protestant idea of predestination, formulated their own way of harmonizing divine predestination and human free will when it comes to salvation. According to Catholic theology, God wants salvation for everyone. So when it comes to God's intentions, His grace is available for everyone. And that's what they call potential grace. But the grace will remain potential if humans will not answer the call. So if you answer the call, this grace is actualized and you are saved. But this salvation process is initiated by God, but it requires your personal response. If you reject the call, then the grace is never actualized. So in other words, if you are saved by God and your own efforts. If you are damned in spite of God's desires, but by your own rejection. So I think this is a very important entry into the topic of ethics, because Baha'i ethics, I think, begins with this moral choice, because this is a moral choice. The first good deed that you can do inside yourself, accepting the manifestation of God. And then everything else basically results from there. How fast you will go, how long you will go on this path, you know, where you will stop or where God will stop you, etc., etc. But as Baha'u'llah stresses in the Most Holy Book, if you do not accept the manifestation of God, it means that you rejected all of them in the past and all of them in the future. And if you do not accept the manifestation of God, no matter how good the person you are, maybe you are the creator of all good deeds possible, still you fail to do the most important thing.
I wanted to bring up a term that I've seen in the Baha'i writings, where occasionally in the writings, Abdul Baha uses the term the elect. And that term is very much, at least in a European English-speaking context, a Calvinistic term. I was looking for citations. I found one in the tablets of Abdul Baha Abbas, which of course was published in 1909. So it might have been using a more antiquated language, but it says, he praises the beloved of God and his maidservants and adorns the ears with the pearls of praiseworthy actions and good qualities of the elect and the faithful. So I did a search on the word elect in the Baha'i Reference Library, and occasionally elect is used with reference to the manifestations. But I'm wondering if that is either implying there is some element of predestination in Baha'i theology, or were the translators in an American Protestant context using the terms of reference they were familiar with?
Look, I can give you my comments about the term. I do not know Persian. I do not know Arabic, so I cannot respond in terms of the translation. But the term elect obviously comes from the Bible. You know, Jews who were the chosen people. Now, there is a misconception about the meaning of the chosen people in the Bible. So the chosen people of Judaism are not better than other people. The meaning of chosenness is that a group of people responded to God's call and followed God's law in its specific version. So Jews do not regard themselves as chosen, meaning as superior to other people, but they regard themselves as chosen to follow the law of Moses, while other communities could follow their own laws of their own prophets. That's why Jews had never any problems with other religions, with converting other people, and they were quite tolerant of Christians and Muslims and others. Now, when Abdul Baha is using the term the elect, I think he refers to the Baha'i community. Those people who are somehow prepared to accept the manifestation of Baha'u'llah. But that does not mean, in my view, that those people are superior to other people, because you know, Baha'u'llah, when asked about the difference between Baha'is and non-Baha'is, at some point says that the difference is that Baha'is are conscious of what is going on, and non-Baha'is are not conscious of what is going on. But it does not mean that a person who is not conscious of what is going on is a bad person. He actually may be a true Baha'i, as Abdul Baha says. A true Baha'i is a person who loves all of humanity, displays all spiritual virtues, etc., etc. So I think there is some element of predestination, but it is not related to human inability to do the moral choice. It refers to various situations, social conditions, educational conditions, and the purpose of life. The purpose of life for every individual is different. And sometimes people need to not become Baha'is in order to fulfill their destiny or their fate or their purpose in life. Because if they become Baha'is, they will change the course of their lives and they will not do what they're supposed to do. For example, if you are on a governmental service and if you are heavily involved in politics, if you are Joe Biden, what if Joe Biden becomes a Baha'i? Should he retire from his position? Should he not run for the second time for the president of the United States, etc., etc.? So different people are in different situations, have different purposes in life, and for some of them, it may not be good to become Baha'is at this point. That's how I take it personally, because the world is very complex. The humanity is proceeding toward the lesser and most great peace in various ways, and those ways are sometimes Well, unpredictable, peculiar, and therefore we have to accept the situation as it is.
Yeah. As highlighted, I found another reference to the elect. In this case, he refers to Abdu'l-Baha refers to Muhammad as the king of. Consider the appearance of the seal of the prophets, the king of the elect. The soul of the worlds be his sacrifice. And that citation is from A Traveler's Narrative. So it seems to suggest that the manifestations, being a different class of being, are in some cases chosen or predestined, which raises the question of whether manifestations have free will.
Well, that is another question, but I want to comment about Muhammad being the king of the elect. So every manifestation is the king, so to say, of those people who follow him.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who follow him are called the elect. So he is the king of the elect.
Good
now,
point.
as for the manifestations having or having no free will, when it comes to the moral choice of accepting their mission, first of all, it's beyond our understanding. Second, I'm trying to remember the instances when Baha'u'llah was trying to, not to reject, but to escape his mission. He went to Turkestan and spent 2 years on the mountains, probably because he was aware of what will happen. He may have been aware of the betrayal that awaits him, and he may have been aware of the turmoil that his mission will initiate, and he wanted to avoid all that. But in the end, he couldn't, and he said that I had to accept it and come back to the people. So it seems to me from this episode in Baha'u'llah's life that the manifestations do have a free will.
Mm-hmm.
So they are not robots that simply, say yes. No, they go through upheavals and turmoils, but we have no examples of manifestations who actually rejected their mission.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there have been. I do not know.
Just searched on predestination and came up with some answered questions, section 68, where it uses the analogy that conditional fate or predestination is like a lamp becoming extinguished, which is preventable by being blown out, whereas decreed fate is like the using up of the oil of the lamp, which cannot be altered, changed, or delayed.
I think Abdu'l-Baha here means the difference between, let's say, one's birth and death, which is the extinguishing of the oil in the lamp, and that is decreed. That cannot be changed. While the second, or the first rather, case of predestination is that you have your whole life in front of you and you can choose what course to take. So this is up to you, but again, certain things are predestined, certain things could be avoided, certain things could be changed, and the whole thing is more complex than predestination versus free will.